Alright, guys. Hello. We will be watching how to spot a liar, like the FBI. I love that title. Yeah. We will be watching that. It is by Rise Above Reality. I think this is him, and this is the liar.
Ever had the feeling someone was lying to you? On average, people lie at least once a day, driven by a variety of reasons. But the main ones are protecting someone else,
To spare someone's feelings, to avoid shame, punishment,
avoiding negative
etc.,
consequences, and
to gain benefits, gaslighting, etc.
manipulating a situation at someone else's expense. That's exactly why being able to spot a lie isn't just a curiosity. It's a real form of self-defense that protects you from likely deception. The FBI has been using lie detection techniques in their interrogations for decades, and today we're going to break down the most effective ones you can
I get it. I know.
use in everyday life to tell if someone's lying to you. So, let's start with the first one. Ask the right questions. A 2018 study looked into what kinds of questions work best for exposing a lie. Overly broad questions like,
General open question.
"Can you tell me how it went last night?" aren't very helpful because they leave room for vague answers and make it easy to dodge uncomfortable details. Questions with a positive assumption, like, "You didn't get back late, right?" are slightly better, but they still kind of suggest an easy way out. The most effective questions are open-ended, but built on a negative assumption. Something like, "What kept you out so late last night?" That kind of question pushes the person to reveal any real problems, or, if they're lying, forces them to come up with a more detailed story, which makes it easier to spot inconsistencies. At the same time, it's important not to turn the conversation into a direct attack. It is often more helpful to create a calm atmosphere where the other person feels free to talk instead of using accusatory questions that put the other person on the defensive. The 5-second rule. This is an approach that combines attention to timing with the presence of multiple signals of deception, called clusters. Not long ago, I read a book that explains this.
Former CIA officers teach you how to detect deception. Spy the Lie. New York Times bestseller.
Method really well. After you ask someone a question, the first 5 seconds are crucial. That's when you need to really watch and listen closely. Why? Because after 5 seconds, the person's brain has had too much time to think, rephrase, or get distracted. So, you can't be sure their reaction is directly tied to your question anymore. The signs you're looking for in those 5 seconds can be verbal, like contradictions and dodging the question, or non-verbal, like touching their face and looking away. Now, spotting just one suspicious behavior, like a slight pause, doesn't mean much. It may depend on personal habits, but if you notice 2 or more signs in that short time frame, that's what's called a cluster, and it significantly raises the chances that the person's lying. Unusual behavior. FBI agents use a specific method to spot lies that's all about observing a person's behavior. Before diving into the tough questions, they spend some time asking neutral ones, just to see how the person normally acts. They pay attention to things like tone of voice, posture, speech patterns, and natural gestures. This is what they call the baseline. The better you know someone, the easier it is to spot their baseline, because you already have a
I'm not understanding any of this. Maybe you guys are, though.
feel for how they usually behave. Once you shift to more sensitive topics, start watching closely for any changes. If their behavior suddenly differs from their baseline, that could be a red flag. If someone who usually makes eye contact suddenly avoids your gaze, that might be a sign they're not being totally honest. The double question. An effective way to bring out a lie is to ask
Actually, I muted it. He's usually yellow, right? Or is that just in the beginning and I haven't paid attention? I don't know, but let's just watch.
way to bring out a lie is to ask related questions about the same event at different times, slightly shifting the angle. You might ask someone, "You hit the gym yesterday, right?" Then, after a few minutes, follow up with something like, "What workout did you do yesterday?" If you notice any inconsistencies between the two answers, that's a clear sign something might not add up. Undecided words. When someone is lying, they often choose their words more carefully. This extra caution usually comes from the fear of getting caught, and it often shows up as vague expressions like, "I think," "maybe," "I guess." These kinds of phrases let the person avoid making firm statements and give them some wiggle room to backtrack if they get challenged. That said, this isn't solid proof of lying on its own. Verbal hesitation can also come from things like stress or just having a bad memory. But if this kind of vague language shows up at key moments in their story, they become signs to watch more carefully. Topic switching. One red flag to watch for is when someone suddenly tries to shift the topic. This kind of behavior often means they're uncomfortable with what was just said and are trying to steer the conversation away, so they don't risk revealing something they'd rather keep hidden. Interruption with context switch. When you shift the focus unexpectedly, you increase the person's cognitive load. Lying is already mentally demanding. It takes effort to make things up, remember what you said, and avoid contradictions. So, if right in the middle of that mental effort, you ask something like, "What were you doing just before that?" you force the person to shift gears and reorganize their story. The goal here is to observe how they handle the interruption. If he seems confused, or if he restarts the story with elements that don't match what was said before, these are signs of a probable lie. The best time to interrupt is right in the middle of their narrative, when their focus is at its peak. After the interruption, you can simply say, "Okay, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead and pick up where you left off." Then, just watch what happens. The fake detail. Another effective technique for spotting a lie is slipping a false detail into the conversation. You could say something like, "You said it was Tuesday, but did you know the store was closed that day?" This tactic plays on a cognitive trap. Someone telling the truth will usually correct the mistake right away, maybe by pointing out that the store was actually open. But someone who's lying is more likely to go along with the false detail to avoid contradicting you, afraid that pushing back might make their whole story seem less believable. Analyze time consistency. To spot inconsistencies, it's helpful to ask for specific time-related details during a conversation. You can do this by asking something like, "What time did you leave and what time did you get there?" People who are lying often struggle to keep their timeline straight. Their answers might not match up with the actual amount of time it would realistically take to do what they're describing. If the
That's cool.
timing doesn't make sense, it's a strong sign that part of the story might be made. Everyone has their own way of making up stories. Some are better at it, while others are easier to spot. So, to get the best results, combine these techniques with your gut feeling by paying close attention to the signals
I'll stop talking now.
the other person gives you. That's the only way to really know when something's off and protect yourself from being fooled. Thanks for the support and see you next time.
Alright, that was cool. Bye. Just bye. I'll see you in the next video that I'm gonna record that right after I upload this. Alright, yeah.